Never start your videos by assuming a comet is just a piece of ice, because this thing, this object, this visitor, 3i Atlas, is already breaking rules before it even gets close to Earth's orbit. If you love mysteries of space, make sure you hit subscribe, because this one deserves your full attention. The strange part is, scientists thought we were ready for interstellar objects after Oumuamua. We believed we had seen the weirdest already, but then 3i Atlas appeared, and everything changed. It didn't just appear like a rock passing through our cosmic neighborhood. It came in like something that understood where it was going, like something with intent, like it was following a route. This is the moment where viewers need to slow down, because this is not a fast story. This is not a breaking news headline story. This is the kind of story you listen to while you are lying down, while your body begins to relax, while your mind quietly wonders how far technology in the universe can really go. This story begins with stillness, not panic. 3i Atlas first confused astronomers when they noticed something simple but incredibly strange. There was no chaotic spin like normal comets usually have, no messy tumble through space. Instead, this giant object held one flat face toward the sun, almost like a shield, almost like a plate. And the shape was never confirmed, but telescopes kept hinting at a flattened look, more like a slab, more like a craft, more like a structure. We're not saying it's alien. We're not saying it's a mothership. But people keep whispering that because it doesn't act like a natural rock. And the most chilling part, scientists already knew this moment would come. Not the moment it arrived, but the moment one of these objects would behave in a way that would force every professional to admit some things in space do not obey the rules we learned in school. 3i Atlas is the object that is making that moment real. So tonight, as you listen, let everything around you go quiet and imagine a massive black shape drifting through interstellar darkness for millions, maybe billions of years, and then suddenly changing course toward us. Not randomly, but almost like a destination. We're only just beginning. And the deeper we look at 3i Atlas, the more one question keeps showing up in the back of people's minds. Why does this object behave like it knows exactly what it's doing? Because even when it first entered the solar system, it didn't move like ice. It didn't behave like dust. There were no messy trails at first, no chaotic spray. It was controlled, stable, almost, focused. The closer it came, the more scientists realized something else unusual. It wasn't losing mass the way ordinary comets do. Even Oumuamua had a faint push from outgassing, like tiny jets of vapor nudging it along. That's normal. 3i Atlas didn't follow that rule. It accelerated without losing anything measurable, no visible tail, no bright plume, no giant spray of particles. Imagine sitting in a silent room and a giant object moves across the floor, but you hear no sound, no air shift, no vibration, nothing to show how it moved. That's what this feels like in space. Silent motion. You can almost picture this thing sliding across the solar system like a ghost, not fighting friction, not being slowed down like rocks normally are, just gliding across space like space itself is helping it move. Some astronomers compared the vibration of its acceleration to a submarine cutting through still water, but perfectly smooth without a single bubble, without any sign that water was ever disturbed. That's how quiet 3i Atlas feels. And that's when the shock really began. Because deep space objects do not quietly accelerate. In physics, everything costs energy. Everything needs force. Everything needs a push. Yet here was this giant dark mass moving faster with no visible push at all. And Earth's best instruments, James Webb, Hubble, the Deep Space Array, all saw the same thing. A strange dark body accelerating without anything to show why it was accelerating. That's the moment when a lot of astronomers stopped calling this a comet and started calling it an anomaly. Because natural objects don't act like that. And in the quiet late-night hours at research centers, when the official channels are closed and only a few analysts are left sitting beside computer screens glowing in the dark, they ask the question they can't say on camera yet. What if this thing isn't just passing through? What if it wants to be here? And if 3i Atlas wants to be here? Then the timing of everything suddenly matters. Because it didn't rush in, it didn't slingshot wildly. It didn't behave like something out of control. It moved with patience, almost like it was waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. And that's where things get even stranger. Because there is a very specific window, a narrow slice of time where Earth, the Sun, and several inner planets line up in a way that exposes our entire orbit like a roadmap. A window where our world becomes easy to measure, easy to analyze, easy to predict. And 3i Atlas entered the solar system right before that alignment, not after, not during, before. As if it wanted to arrive early, settle into position, observe quietly, so that when the planets lined up, it would already be in the exact right place to watch everything unfold. That is why researchers stopped calling it coincidence, because random rocks don't pick perfect timing, and natural objects don't match their arrival to orbital alignment windows. Only intelligence does that. Only planning does that. Only intent does that. And when observers ran the trajectory plots backward, not forward, backward, it became even more disturbing. If you trace the path of 3i Atlas back through space, through the black emptiness between suns, and keep going, eventually its path lines up with the same region of space where the legendary wow signal came from. The moment people saw that, the entire mood changed. This wasn't just a rock. This wasn't just a comet. This was coming from the same patch of sky where we once heard a signal that looked like a transmission. 40 years apart, different decades, different data, same direction. And if that alignment really means something, if this thing really came from the same region as that famous signal, then this might not be the first time they tried to talk to us. This might be the second. And that is a completely different kind of fear. Because a one-time anomaly can be dismissed. But a second appearance from the same origin, that means continuity. That means memory. That means intention. That means something or someone out there knows we exist and is still watching. So when that unexplained acceleration was first recorded, nobody believed it. Nobody. Because that kind of motion doesn't happen in silence. It doesn't happen without heat. It doesn't happen without visible force. You can't take a city-sized object drifting through space and then suddenly make it speed up or shift or lean into a new direction without something violent happening, something explosive, something visible. But 3i Atlas did it anyway, without noise, without heat, without thrust. It was like watching a mountain glide. And in the control rooms, the reactions changed rapidly from confusion to disbelief to fear, because space is supposed to be honest. Physics does not lie. When objects change velocity, they leave fingerprints. Plasma, heat, ion trails, something. But this thing left nothing. It just moved, quietly, almost politely, like a car switching lanes on an empty highway. The analysts reviewing that moment said something very strange. It was like the space around the object bent, as if the acceleration was not created on the object itself, but inside the fabric of space around it. Like something was pushing the universe, not the object. That is not propulsion. That is not physics as we know it. That is behavior. And here's the detail that nobody expected. After the acceleration, the brightness didn't increase. Usually, when comets spin or flare or vent gas, they get brighter because the surface ejects material. But this one? It actually dimmed, as if it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. That made experts in one specific field instantly jump into the conversation. Advanced materials. Because there is only one known reason an object would get darker after changing speed. Surfaces coated in programmable metal. Metals that can alter reflectivity. Metals that can shift contrast. Metals that can hide themselves. Stealth. But not for airplanes. Stealth for space. Now imagine the kind of technology required to create that. Not heat, not fire, not rockets, not fuel. Just manipulation. Like whatever it used to accelerate was silent because it didn't need combustion. It only needed control. So here's where things started to feel less like astronomy and more like surveillance. Because after that silent acceleration, NASA expected turbulence, chaos particles scatter some kind of dust signature. Instead, 3i Atlas began doing something even stranger. It became predictable, but not predictable in the way space objects usually are. Predictable in a way that looked intentional. Every few hours, like clockwork, it would shift brightness in perfectly timed intervals. Not random blinking, not comet outgassing. No, this looked like pulses, intervals, rhythmic, timed, like a lighthouse in deep space. The weirdest part? The pulse timing wasn't symmetrical. It wasn't 4, 4, 4, 4. It was 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. A repeating pattern. NASA's optical photometry team crossed it against background stars, and the spacing matched points in the sky where tracking telescopes were rotating away from the object. It was pulsing when the cameras weren't looking directly at it. That's not coincidence. That's evasive behavior. Something that knew when it was being watched. Something that preferred to be observed only from the edges. And when one of the data analysis interns ran the timing pattern through a Fourier transform just to see if it resembled anything natural, it matched the baseline frequency used in deep space probe pinging. Not ours, but the same structure. Ping. Wait. Return. Ping. Wait. Return. Silent, invisible, radioless, handshake attempts. That is the moment when the conversation in NASA changed. Not publicly, not on TV, internally. This might not be traveling alone. This might be a node. This might be a network asset. One of the analysts on a hot mic whispered something that later got caught in the closed caption feed. This isn't the object, this is the scout. Let that marinate for a second, because if this is the small one, then the real question isn't, what is 3i Atlas? The real question becomes, where is the thing that sent it? Because when astronomers traced the exact inbound angle of 3i Atlas, something happened that sent one of the senior researchers home early that night. They didn't just project its path, they rewound it backwards, frame by frame, gravity corrected, interstellar drag adjusted. They followed that invisible thread out of our solar system back into interstellar space, back toward the star field it emerged from. And it did not line up with empty darkness. It lined up with something that has bothered radio astronomers for almost half a century. The region of sky where one of the most famous unexplained radio bursts in history came from. The wow signal. August 15th, 1977. A perfect, tight, high-energy radio tone from deep space. Never repeated, never explained. People have argued for decades whether it was a glitch or alien transmission. But here's the part nobody expected. 3i Atlas is coming from within that same 9-degree region. 9 degrees. In astronomy, that's not similar. That's bullseye territory. The chance of a random interstellar object arriving from that exact patch of sky, the same patch associated with a one-time perfect narrowband signal, is less than 1%. And the people who know this aren't conspiracy theorists. They're the same people who built the databases we study the sky with. Even more uncomfortable? 3i Atlas's brightness curve, the weird rhythmic pulse it's been giving off, fits almost perfectly between the major wow signal peaks. As if the two events are related. As if the radio burst was part 1 and this arrival is part 2. Now nobody is saying that out loud in official press releases. Not NASA, not ESA, not JPL, but inside private internal emails the tone has shifted. It's no longer, is this a comet? It's now closer to, what if this has been inbound for decades and we just now finally intersect its path? Because this isn't an object that accidentally drifted this direction. This is something that has been headed here longer than anyone watching today has been alive. And now, for the first time, humanity is in the way. When 3i Atlas passed Mars, something happened that shouldn't have been possible. Every object we've ever tracked at interstellar speeds behaves like one simple thing. A rock, accelerated by gravity, slowed only by gas, drag, drifting, passive, dumb. But as Atlas glided past Mars, its motion changed. Not by accident. Not gradually. Not like a natural object brushing the thin upper atmosphere. It changed with intention. ESA's deep space tracking network saw it first. There was a micro-adjustment in its radial velocity. Not random, not turbulence, a correction, like something compensating, like something aiming. And then another anomaly. Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter detected a spike in reflected energy, not thermal, not visible, but structured. It was bouncing signals back at Atlas, and Atlas was responding. Not like a rock, like a device. For 47 minutes, Mars's orbiters recorded strange narrowband returns coming from the object. Even stranger? The signals were strongest when Mars rotated around the region where ancient underground ice is thickest. It was like Atlas wasn't observing Mars from outside. It was scanning beneath the crust. As if it wanted to know what was beneath the red dust, the ancient water, the possible subsurface aquifers. And the timing, this wasn't random. It didn't just happen to scan Mars on the way by. It turned, it slowed, it aligned, it scanned, then it continued. NASA didn't expect that, because that's not comet behavior. That's reconnaissance behavior. Imagine a submarine gliding silently past a coastline, pinging the seabed, mapping the ground, then leaving like nothing happened. That's what 3I Atlas did to Mars. And if that was its warm-up, what does it mean when it points toward Earth next? Hours after the Mars scan, something even more bizarre occurred. Atlas dimmed, not like dust scattering sunlight, not like a comet fragmenting. It dimmed like a machine cutting power. The light curve dropped by nearly 14%, across 2 observation bands. Then after 19 minutes, it brightened again. Not gradually, instantly, as if someone flipped a switch. Astrophysicists don't talk like this publicly, but behind closed doors, the language is changing. They aren't using words like fragment shedding anymore. They're using words like active surface, controlled reflectivity, intentional modulation. Because natural objects don't dim and brighten like binary signals. Machines do. Even stranger, after that blink event, its trajectory shifted by 0.00018 AU. That sounds small, but at interstellar speeds, that's the difference between a near miss and a direct intercept decades later. It didn't drift. It corrected, it adjusted, it chose, and that's when something terrifying happened. ESA's space weather sensors picked up 3 high-energy particle bursts coming from the direction of Atlas, but there were no solar flares at that moment, meaning the energy wasn't from the sunday. It came from the object itself, like ignition. Like a propulsion system testing itself briefly, quietly. Astronomers froze. That was the moment for many where the conversation stopped being, "What is this made of?" and became, "What is it trying to do?" Because 3I Atlas isn't consistent with any chemical propulsion we know of, there was no heat spike. There was no plume. Just pure vector change. Silent, precise, calculated. If this is natural, it is the strangest natural object in the history of observation. If it isn't, then we just measured the first maneuver of something artificial inside our solar system with our own telescopes. And the next adjustment based on current trajectories is expected during its solar grays. And during that window, Earth will be almost directly in its outbound line of travel. As Atlas approached the Sun, everyone expected the same thing that happens to every frozen interstellar rock that gets too close. It should have boiled. It should have hissed. It should have vented gases violently like Oumuamua was suspected to do, or like Borisov clearly did. Because even nitrogen ice, even exotic volatiles, even unknown compounds, all heat up in solar proximity. That's basic physics. Nothing can avoid that. Nothing natural. But when Atlas skimmed inside Mercury's orbital band, the spectrometers stayed flat. No outgassing, no coma, no tail, no chemical signature of sublimation. The object didn't release anything. It stayed cold, extremely cold, like it was insulated from the sun intentionally, like heat wasn't even a factor to it. And then, and this part still doesn't sit right with anyone in planetary science, its rotation rate changed. Rotation doesn't just casually shift. Rotation is momentum. Rotation is history. Rotation is like a cosmic fingerprint. But Atlas rotated faster, then slower, then stabilized to a perfect integer division of its original spin period, like tuning, like calibration, like aligning to something. NASA's solar imagers caught faint spikes, micro-deviances in solar wind deflection consistent with electromagnetic manipulation. Not magnetic like a naturally magnetized iron-nickel core. Controlled field manipulation. Engineers in Pasadena compared 3 separate data sets and said very quietly that this looked like attitude control. The same kind spacecraft do, except Atlas is 20 kilometers wide. Nothing that big should be adjusting orientation like a probe. Nothing that old should be actively changing its rotational axis to optimize something we can't even identify yet. And yet, that's what it did. And after the sun skim, it began turning toward us. Not toward Earth's center, toward Earth's orbital plane. It aligned with us, like it was tracking our motion, like it knew where we would be, like it was preparing for the next step, and that moment was when fear replaced curiosity, because this wasn't a stray rock drifting past. This was a deliberate approach, like something coming closer, on purpose. What happened next didn't start in space. It started here, on Earth. The timestamp is important. 2:14 UTC. Atlas was still far beyond the moon's orbit, still just a cold speck to the naked eye, still just a blip on tracking screens. But at that exact minute, a strange low-frequency pulse washed through multiple seismic stations, not as an earthquake, but as a pattern, not shaking, not tectonic, a frequency. A perfect repeating tone. At first, analysts assumed it was terrestrial interference, maybe submarine sonar, maybe underground military testing. But then, Chile detected it. Japan detected it. South Africa detected it. Iceland, Hawaii, Australia. Every station, same pattern, same pulse. No delay. That's impossible. Because when something happens across the planet, waves take time to move. But this arrived everywhere instantly, as if the signal wasn't traveling through Earth, but arriving at Earth, and that's when the correlation hit the JPL console. Atlas's orientation shifted exactly at the same moment, not minutes later, not earlier. Perfect simultaneity. Someone in mission ops said out loud, whispering like they were afraid to break the moment, is greater than it's pinging the planet. It wasn't a rock. It wasn't a visitor. It was interacting. Suddenly, the object wasn't just coming toward us. It was talking, using frequencies we don't even have names for. Spectral analysis of that pulse revealed something even more disturbing. The harmonics matched the same interval spacing found inside Earth's Schumann resonances, the natural electromagnetic pulse created between the ground and the ionosphere. In other words, it didn't use our transmitters. It used the planet's cavity as the amplifier, like it already knew how our world worked, like it understood the resonance shell of Earth, like it had done this before. Maybe not here, but somewhere, some other star, some other civilization, some other planet. And as that realization formed, the object drifted closer by a measurable fraction. Not random, not ballistic, intentional. And so, NASA did what humans always do when they're terrified, but pretending they're in control. They tried to answer back, but there was a problem. How do you reply to something that isn't speaking in human radio language? Cipher teams at Ames and JPL scrapped every normal protocol. They noticed the pulse atlas used wasn't binary, wasn't Morse, wasn't digital encoding at all. It was mathematical spacing, ratios, intervals, like a sequence meant for someone who understands numbers before symbols. So they built a reply using the only thing that cannot be lost in translation anywhere in the universe. Prime numbers. Every intelligent mathematician understands primes, even if they've never seen a human alphabet. So the test transmission, short, simple, was sent toward Atlas. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. 5 primes. No cultural context. No Earth language. Just raw math. Then they waited. The consoles went silent. Technicians stopped breathing, because if Atlas responded, it would mean it understood. 32 seconds later, a return signal appeared. Same pattern, same structure, but not mirrored, not repeated, expanded. Atlas sent back the next 23 primes. Not random, not noise, not reflection. It knew what we were doing. It continued the sequence as if to say, I understand the idea. Continue the pattern. And that's when everything in the room shifted. Nobody spoke. Nobody shouted. Nobody celebrated. Because in that one instant, there was no more maybe, no more what if, no more probably natural. Atlas had just done something no natural object in the known universe does. It completed a mathematical conversation. Director Mallory, who was on duty that night, said later in a closed briefing something that leaked in fragments online. Is greater than. That was the first moment we realized we were no longer observing. We were being observed back. And as fast as the reply came, Atlas rotated again. Not randomly, not drifting. A deliberate reorientation toward Earth's orbital path. Like a chess piece being advanced one square at a time, no rush, no panic, just straight, cold strategy. There was no engine burst, no plume, no thrust, just a tiny vector change. But it was enough. Trajectory models recalculated. For the first time, Earth wasn't possibly nearby. Earth became the destination. The first government to panic wasn't the United States. It was Japan. Because Japan had something nobody else had. suborbital wide-field telescope arrays that were already pointed near the outbound flank of Earth's orbit, and those arrays caught something the others didn't. Atlas wasn't just coasting, it was changing shape. Not all at once. Not dramatically, but the light signature scattering across its surface began to shift like flat plates slowly tilting, angling, aligning. Engineers at JWST described it like this. Is greater than, it's like a sunflower tracking the sun. Except this sunflower is tracking us. Then ESA, the European Space Agency, confirmed the same pattern from the La Palma Observatory. And then this is where everything took a darker turn. Someone inside the UK Defence Analytics Group leaked a very tiny section of a classified internal report. It wasn't words. It was just one graph. The graph showed 3 clean spikes in the reflected spectral lines, evenly spaced like pulsed calibration sweeps, aimed directly at Earth. That wasn't random. That wasn't cosmic chaos. That was targeting. Atlas wasn't just heading toward our orbital neighborhood. It was mapping it. The decision tree shifted instantly. Atlas went from mysterious visitor to incoming intelligence. Every agency in the world stopped asking, "What is Atlas?" and replaced it with the only question that now mattered. What does Atlas want? Because if Atlas was an object that had acceleration, nobody could explain. If Atlas could stop itself cold in deep space, and if Atlas could respond to prime numbers, then the one possibility no one ever wanted to say out loud was now sitting at the front of everyone's mind. Like a heavy rock, Atlas might not be a rock. Atlas might be a probe, a scout, a surveyor that has now decided to advance. And just like that, humanity crossed a line. There was no going back now. And here's the part that really shook people who understand how space missions actually work. Because if Atlas is a scout, then that means scouts are never the first wave. Scouts are the confirmation wave. You don't send a scout to look for something you don't already know exists. You send a scout to verify, to measure, to prepare the landing zone for whatever comes after. Think about it. Even we don't send a rover to Mars just to see what's there. We already know what's there. We scan with satellites first. We do radar passes first. We do atmospheric sampling first. Then when we're sure, we send the rover. So, if Atlas is accelerating deliberately, if Atlas responds to prime number pulses, if Atlas is aligning plates like adaptive panels, if Atlas is mapping us, then the question becomes, what exactly is Atlas preparing? Because in 2017, when Oumuamua blew past us and nobody knew what it was, scientists said it's too strange to be natural. In 2019, when Borisov passed, we all relaxed because it looked normal. But this one isn't behaving like either of those. Atlas didn't just come here by chance. Atlas didn't just drift into our solar system. It came in hot. It slowed down. It angled inward to Earth's orbital lane. And if an object can change its own velocity, that means one thing everyone inside the classified side already knows. It is not a comet anymore. Comets don't throttle. Comets don't brake. Comets don't run calculations on us. So if Atlas is artificial even in the smallest tiny chance, then whatever is behind Atlas already knows we exist. Atlas would not be here to discover Earth. It would be here to study Earth. which leads to the most uncomfortable thought of all. What if Atlas isn't here alone? What if Atlas is just the first voice in a conversation we didn't choose to start? A conversation we may not be prepared to answer. And somewhere deep inside, every scientist watching this unfold knows. Once something sees you, you can't pretend you're invisible anymore. Everything changes right there. And that is where we are right now. So imagine this for a second. You standing on a quiet beach at night. The ocean is calm. The waves are gentle. Nothing seems wrong. Then far out on the horizon you see a faint light. Just one light. Not bright. Not urgent. Just there. Most people would ignore it. But if you stay looking long enough, you start to notice something disturbing. That light isn't drifting randomly like a boat. It's moving with intention. That is the exact energy scientists are quietly sitting with right now. Because Atlas isn't just there. It's reacting, not strongly, not dramatically, not in ways the average person notices, but in ways that make professionals go pale. Small directional corrections, micro changes in its rotational profile, a pulse of energy when nothing should be pulsing, like a person whispering not loud enough for the whole room, but loud enough that the one person they want to hear it hears it. And those small, subtle changes are actually more frightening than something obvious. Because when something intelligent wants to hide, the last thing it will do is behave loudly. It will behave carefully. You don't scream when you're trying to study something. You move quiet. You move faint. You move in shadows. That's Atlas, not a show, a surveillance mode. And this is what freaks astrophysicists out. Atlas is not burning a clear trail of dust right now, which would have made things easier to interpret. Dust trails are signatures. Dust trails are nature, the absence of dust, the absence of signature. It forces a new category, non-natural propulsion. And if that's the case, if this is not natural thrust, then it means someone engineered this. That someone understood orbital mechanics, plotted our solar system, calculated gravitational assists, and deliberately chose this timing to arrive. This is not a cosmic accident. This is strategy. And the solar system suddenly doesn't feel big anymore. It feels like a small room. And something else just walked in. And the strangest part is this. Scientists aren't denying what they're seeing. They're just not naming it yet. Because admitting something out loud makes it real, and once it's real, you can't take it back. So they describe Atlas with phrases like non-gravitational behavior, low observable acceleration signature, radiation-induced torque anomaly. All these fancy, softened terms, when the simple version is more terrifying. It reacted to something. That's not random. That's not passive. Objects don't react unless there is intent. And here's where things get creepier. Several telescopes recorded that tiny acceleration change at the exact same moment. But they were all in different parts of the planet. That means it wasn't an instrument glitch. Multiple systems, same reading, same second. It's like watching someone turn their head, not enough to call it action, but enough to show they're aware that you exist. Atlas didn't just speed up, it adjusted. Do you get the difference? One is physics. One is choice, And that's the whisper in the room right now. If something is making decisions, then something is piloting, even if we never see who or what is inside. Even if it's automated, even if it's ancient tech drifting on auto route, it is still technology. And that opens a door most people are not emotionally ready for. We are not watching a rock. We are watching a mechanism. If we keep tracking at this current rate, we're going to know very soon if this thing is positioning itself for a swing toward the inner solar system, or if it's lining up to rendezvous with something else out there. Because experts already know. You don't perform a micro-acceleration unless there's a target. And the only question left is, what is Atlas aiming for? There's another layer almost nobody is talking about publicly because it's not the kind of thing scientists want tied to their name. It's the timing. Atlas isn't just moving through the solar system randomly. It's arriving during a period when Earth, Jupiter, and the Sun are in a rare positional geometry, a sort of gravitational corridor that happens only occasionally in our timeline. That corridor makes travel easier. Less fuel, less energy, less time wasted. Like an interstate highway, but invisible. The trajectory of Atlas isn't chaotic at all. It's efficient. Almost like it's following a preloaded path. Now here's where the room gets cold. That same corridor also existed around the time of Oumuamua, and again around Borisov. All three interstellar objects, the only three we've ever recorded, threaded into our system during periods where interplanetary gravity was at its most convenient. That's a pattern. Patterns are not accidents. Patterns are signatures. If you're a civilization sending out probes, or scouts, or resource collectors, you wouldn't want to just shoot them blindly through space. You'd wait for the corridors. You'd use the highways. You'd time the launches. It saves centuries. It saves power. It increases success. Atlas moving now doesn't look like luck. It looks calculated. It looks scheduled. It looks like somebody, somewhere, understands the mathematics of our neighborhood better than we do. Imagine how unsettling that is. We are not the ones detecting them first. We are the ones catching them mid-route. That means we're not the beginning of their journey. We're a waypoint, a stop, a turn, a pass-through, maybe even a pickup zone. Scientists don't want to say this out loud because it collapses the comfort bubble. It means our entire star system might not be as isolated as we once believed. And if these objects come in on corridors, then the next one won't be random either. It'll be right on schedule. And that brings us to the uncomfortable question that's slowly forming in the background. If this is intentional travel, then who else knows this corridor exists? And more importantly, what's waiting at the other end of it? Think about this for a moment. If Atlas truly changed speed, then something must have applied force. Because in deep space, objects don't just randomly speed up. There are only three ways to do that. A. Propulsion. B. Outgassing. C. External influence. Outgassing would mean gases exploding out of vents like a normal comet, which would create visible jets. But in every frame we've seen, there are none. No plumes, no glowing streams spraying off the body. Nothing. Propulsion? That would mean engines. Some kind of internal energy source. But we have no visible thrust signature. Which leaves the one option scientists hate the most, the one that keeps them awake at night. External influence, meaning something acted on Atlas, which opens a disturbing door. Because if something acted on Atlas, then something else knew where Atlas was. Something else knew when Atlas would be there. Something else knew what small maneuver would shift its angle relative to the Sunday. That's not a natural event. That's coordination. That implies Atlas is not alone. That implies Atlas is not a wanderer. It implies Atlas might be responding. Responding to what? A signal? A beacon? A rendezvous point? An instruction we can't detect yet? What if the acceleration moment we observed wasn't just movement, but communication? Like a nod, like a subtle handshake between two unknown objects using physics instead of radio. Because if you're advanced enough, you don't need antennas. Your signal could be motion. Trajectory could be the message. Atlas changing speed at that specific moment could have been a reply. And now you have to ask, if there was a reply, who sent the first message? So imagine this. Earth is watching Atlas. Telescopes, coronagraph cams, infrared sweeps, hundreds of instruments scanning, logging, tracking. But what if we're not the main observer in this scene? What if we're the accidental one? Because the universe is massive, and statistically, our solar system is nothing but a rest stop on the side of a galactic highway we don't even understand yet. Maybe Atlas isn't coming to us. Maybe it's passing through us. Maybe we're just elbow room, and the acceleration event we caught on camera was never meant for human eyes. Maybe we intercepted a private moment, a cosmic whisper, a correction that is part of a much larger route, a route that's been ongoing long before Earth existed, a route that stretches across millions of years and empty interstellar darkness. And here's where things get uncomfortable. If Atlas is responding to something else, that means something else is nearby. Not here in our immediate neighborhood, but close enough to interact with it. Which raises an even more terrifying possibility. What if Atlas never meant to be detected? Think about how we found this thing. It wasn't bright like a normal comet. It didn't have a glowing gas halo. It didn't spit out material that sticks out like a neon sign. It was dark, silent, hard to see, almost like it was coated in something designed to avoid detection. A stealth object in space, not glowing, not screaming, "Look at me," just sliding along the edge of invisibility. And that means something even worse. If we could barely see it, how many others have passed by and we never noticed? And here's where the story twists in a way that scientists hate to think about. Because humans, especially scientists, like to assume we are the ones discovering space. We say, we found Atlas. We say, we caught it accelerating. We say, we are tracking it. But what if that's actually backwards? What if Atlas didn't accidentally drift past us? What if we were on its planned route to begin with? What if Earth, the Sun, Jupiter, all of it is just a waypoint? Just like a tiny gas station on a long-haul interstellar highway. Because here's something strange. Atlas is not behaving like a random rock. Random rocks don't move like this. Random rocks don't accelerate like this. Random rocks don't take clean, predictable slingshot routes. This thing is fine-tuning itself. And the most terrifying part? It's doing it with perfect timing, as if it already knew where the Sun would be, where Jupiter would be, where Earth would be. Not this year, not last year, but thousands of years ago, which means this was planned before humans existed, before pyramids, before animals, before continents were in the same place. Atlas was already on the way, as if it was launched when Earth was still crawling with primitive life, and humans were not even a concept. That isn't alien ship sensationalism. That is just pure math, trajectory math. Objects don't end up in these orbits by luck. To get this exact approach angle, to get this exact speed, to align with the Sun this precisely, means something with intelligence had to aim it. And this uncomfortable silence we're feeling right now, that's the realization creeping in. Maybe we're not watching it pass. Maybe it's always been watching us. Because here's the part almost nobody thinks about. Atlas didn't announce itself. We only noticed it when it got close enough, which means if there are more like it, we wouldn't notice those either, until they wanted to be noticed. That is what unsettles scientists the most. Because imagine this, if Atlas is not a random object, and it was launched intentionally, then Atlas might not be the event. Atlas might be the first ping, the scout, the probe, the sensor, the quiet handshake request across space. And here's what makes this theory even more chilling. Earth has been broadcasting radio into space for just 120 years. That's nothing, barely a blink. Yet Atlas, by coincidence, just happens to enter our solar system right now. Just as our civilization hits global digital communication stage, just as we develop telescopes powerful enough to see it, just as we start sending probes beyond the Moon and Mars, just as we solve propulsion equations that were impossible 150 years ago, too perfect, too synced, too timely. It's as if whatever sent Atlas knew the exact window when we would finally be able to detect something like it. Meaning, Atlas didn't arrive randomly. It waited to arrive when we could SEE. Not 1,000 years ago, not 1 million years ago, not in the age of dinosaurs. But now, at the exact moment in human history when we are just barely smart enough to recognize this behavior is not natural. And here's something even darker. Atlas isn't interacting with us directly. It's not signaling Earth. It's not beaming messages at telescopes. It's focusing on gravity wells. The Sunday Mars, Jupiter, that's not curiosity. That's mapping. Only navigational systems care about mass calculations. Pilots, navigation AIs, incoming trajectories. We humans decode gravity to build slingshots for spacecraft. What if Atlas is doing the same thing, not as an experiment, but because it is preparing for something bigger behind it? Astronomers at Mauna Kea reported something strange during the last tracking session. It wasn't Atlas itself. It was the space around Atlas. Every time Atlas crossed a region of deep sky, faint background, stars flickered like something transparent brushed across them. Not fully visible, not solid, not debris, more like a thin distortion similar to how heat shimmer bends light above desert sand. But this is space, there is no hot air, So instruments flagged it as non-thermal optical distortion. And NASA quietly forwarded that data to the same office that analyzed the Tic Tac UFO footage. Because distortions like that don't happen naturally unless there is mass-bending photons or force fields. The leading quiet hypothesis: Atlas may not be traveling alone. It may be surrounded by some kind of invisible shell. Not a sphere, not armor, but more like a field halo. Something that deflects radiation. Something that protects the main object. Something that makes sense if the object is traveling for millions of years. Here's the detail that shocked one researcher so badly she paused the interview clip mid-sentence. When Atlas receives solar wind, the distortion briefly expands, meaning whatever the field is around it, it reacts, not passively, actively, like a living membrane, like something that adapts. One astrophysicist whispered off record, is greater than, if this is a probe, it has a nervous system. And here's where things start to get very uncomfortable. Atlas is accelerating again. Not a huge jump, not enough for mainstream news, but enough for anyone watching the raw numbers to feel their stomach drop. It is speeding up without outgassing again. No gas tail, no jets, no debris, no radiation spike. Just more velocity from nowhere, like something decided to push the throttle just a little more, like something knows exactly where it's going, like something wants to be early rather than on time. And if it keeps accelerating at this small but constant rate, Atlas will arrive at its next predicted course alignment sooner than expected. That alignment is the one nobody wants to talk about out loud. Earth's orbital corridor. Suddenly, ground-based access to Atlas telemetry started to glitch. Websites that normally stream raw positional data went down for routine maintenance. It wasn't one site. It wasn't two. Within 48 hours, 6 major public tracking portals from Europe to Hawaii all quietly removed Atlas from their update feeds. No emergency bulletin, no public explanation, just silence. But the weirdest part isn't that data vanished. It's what replaced it. Instead of coordinates, there were placeholders, blank tables, empty columns, as if Atlas was still there, but the numbers were being withheld manually. And the timing lines up exactly with the moment Atlas's acceleration increased again. Not by much, just enough to tell every expert this thing is adjusting itself on purpose, like something steering, like something correcting course. And here's what bothers analysts more than anything. Atlas is not acting with the randomness of a comet. It's acting with restraint. It's not accelerating like something unstable. It's accelerating like something waiting, like a driver tapping the gas, to arrive at the exact second they meant to. A NASA insider speaking anonymously said it like this: is greater than it feels like a machine that knows its schedule. And if that's true, then the next question becomes terrifyingly simple. Who or what built a machine that can cross star systems and calibrate its timing to seconds, years in advance? Because this isn't chaos anymore. This is choreography. And Atlas is approaching one of the most sensitive, invisible boundaries in our solar system, Earth's gravitational influence zone. The moment objects enter that region, Earth Earth's mass, even from millions of kilometers away, starts to tug. Not enough to pull them in, but enough for navigation to matter. If Atlas is deliberate, if Atlas is timing this, then crossing that boundary is not an accident. Not some random space rock drifting through. It is an entry, a planned entry, to what we still don't know. Military orbital logs show something most people would never notice. Geostationary satellites began to shuffle. Tiny changes, fractions of a degree, adjustments so small they don't trigger public NOTAM warnings. But to analysts who track satellite constellations, this was not random. 3 US. Reconnaissance platforms, normally fixed over the Middle East and Pacific, shifted not toward China, not toward Russia, but toward the exact region of space where Atlas's path intersects Earth's orbital ring. These satellites aren't imaging cities. They aren't pointed at missile silos. They are looking into deep space. And that never happens unless something is there worth tracking that isn't public. When the military reorients sky-facing optics, it's either 1. Solar threat, 2. Asteroid trajectory, 3. Unidentified craft. This time, all 3 are technically possible. But here is the red flag. They did it before Atlas enters the influence zone, meaning they want eyes early, meaning something is expected, meaning this is not observe and wait. It's watch the moment the unknown crosses a line. And that brings us to the strangest part. Atlas is now at a point where we should see its light signature increase because sunlight angle improves. Instead, its brightness curve is flat, no increase, no reflective flare, no natural glint. If this was dust or ice, sunlight should spike its visibility. It's not. It's almost like the surface is absorbing light, like it's designed to not be seen, like it's engineered to remain a silhouette. And that, more than the acceleration, more than the missing data, more than the military repositioning, that one fact is the part that scares astronomers the most. Not that Atlas is moving faster, but that it's moving smarter. Because nature does not try to hide. Intelligence does. When something in space wants to remain invisible, there are only a few logical reasons. Predators hide. Hunters hide. Scouts hide. Nothing benign masks its signature. And Atlas is masking everything. When sunlight hits rock or ice, the object glows brighter. Even Oumuamua, strange as it was brightened when sunlight struck it. Atlas? No, it stays matte black. Like it doesn't want to reflect light. Like the dark is part of its function. Astronomers started comparing its reflectivity with other known bodies, comets, asteroids, interstellar debris. Atlas doesn't match any of them. Its albedo, the brightness value, is closer to carbon nanotube stealth coating than anything natural. Something like that isn't formed by chance. That's engineered. But there's something even more unsettling. No radio noise. Even natural objects produce background static solar wind, bouncing off structure, ionization trails, particulate crackle. Atlas has none. It's as if the entire object is grounded electrically, as if it's shielded, as if it was built to move through space without disturbing anything around it. Think about that. Something traveling tens of thousands of kilometers per second. Something that should be flaring with ionization. Something that should be glowing like hot metal is gliding silently, like it's wrapped inside some field we don't understand. Astronomers don't call it strange behavior anymore. They call it intelligent silence. Atlas didn't drift into alignment. It corrected, slowly, purposefully. Tracking stations in Spain and Chile confirmed the same micro-adjustments within hours of each other. It wasn't random wobble. It wasn't thermal stress. It was a course correction. And here's the detail that shook every analyst who saw the data. The adjustment did not match the gravitational curve of the Sunday. It matched Earth's future position, not where Earth is. Where Earth will be. That means Atlas is calculating ahead. That means Atlas knows our orbit, our velocity, our future coordinates. And the terrifying part? It corrected before it got close enough for sunlight to reveal the shape. It corrected while it was still faint. That is not something a rock does. That is something a navigator does. And this is where things get insane. Deep space observation satellites saw a sharp spike, not in light, not in heat, but in the ultraviolet band. There was a single burst almost like a ping, like something sending a handshake signal. And the signature wasn't pointed outward into the cosmos. It was pointed straight toward Earth. NASA never publicly commented on that transmission, but leaked spectrograms from one of the European labs show something no one can explain. The frequency pattern matched a repeating interval, a rhythm, almost like a structured pulse. Not noise, not chaos, not nature. It looked like information. And the moment the pulse was detected, Atlas rotated again. Now the object's bright phase, whatever that bright geometry is angled toward our planet, like something that is no longer hiding, like something that is now observing. Atlas is no longer just an object. It now feels like a presence. A presence intentionally locking on to the one world in this system with consciousness, data, technology, and attention. Because if anything in this universe wanted to make contact with a species, it would not start with Jupiter. It would start with us. Here's the part they never wanted the public to hear. Multiple sources, 3 separate labs, confirmed the UV pulse atlas fired toward Earth contained repeated prime number sequences. Prime numbers don't happen by accident. Prime numbers are the universal hello. They're the one mathematical pattern every intelligence anywhere would understand. And the interval encoded inside that pulse was 12 minutes. 12 minutes. The exact amount of time it takes Atlas at its current acceleration to close 1 million kilometers in its new trajectory. That means the signal wasn't a random burst. It was a countdown, a marker, a step function. The next UV pulse is projected to hit Earth's direction soon, according to those leaked predictions. And if Atlas accelerates again when it happens, then this object isn't just passing by. It's approaching. The data is no longer about weird physics or broken expectations. It's about contact. And the thing that terrifies every analyst is this. Atlas is not slowing down. It's speeding up, and it's now heading into an intercept with our orbital pathway not by chance, but by choice. Whatever this thing is, it has made its move. And we are no longer observers. We are now the target. final CTA. If you want the next update, you have to stay close, because the next 72 hours could change everything. So subscribe, and when the next data drop leaks, we go through it together. Because we're no longer watching a space mystery. We're watching something approach us. And when it arrives, every truth we've been told about the universe might collapse in one night. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.